Tonari is a new game from designers Alex Randolph and Bruno Faiduti. It's a bit odd saying new game with Alex Randolph given that he died in 2004. He is not designing Beyond the Grave with Bruno Faiduti. I think Faiduti's an interesting guy. Maybe he could do it. I'm not sure. But what Bruno Faiduti has done is taken an earlier Alex Randolph design, modified it, and released it in a new version for 2 to 4 players, where the original game was only 3 to 4 players. You'll understand why when I show you how it works. Here are the components of Tonari set up for play with the tiles pulled out of the box and laid out at random. You represent fishermen on the island of Kuchinoshima that has encountered a storm and has only one boat remaining, and you have decided to share it as you go into the ocean to catch fish. On a turn, a player moves the boat to an adjacent space and takes the tile shown there. So the first player might take this fish, move the boat. Next player perhaps goes for this one, takes the boat, and so on. Now, what you're trying to do is get the most points. The colored fish, the red, the green, yellow, and blue, are going to score in a pyramid scoring style. The first one you get is 1 point, the next one 2 points, the next one 3 points, and so on. So you'll get 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, up to 21 points if you get all the fish of a single color. The orange shrimp, crawfish, not sure, are worth 8 points, but if you have the most of them, there are 7 of those tokens, and if you get a majority compared to, if you have more than each other player, you score 8 points. If there's a tie, no one gets anything. The pink fish are worth 5 points, but you can capture them only if you jump over an empty space to get them. Otherwise, they're super big and would swamp your boat, so don't mess with them. There's some garbage worth -5 points. You don't want to get that. There's some special tiles here, such as this one, which will double the value for one of the regular type fish. The next player could go and take this. However, they have to assign that to a color that is already on the board, that has already been collected, that is. So they don't have any red or green. Why would they want this one? They could go here. There's 2 of these tiles where you can swap fish that you hold, but again, this player has no tile. So you're often trying to make choices to force the next player to do something, except that your score in a 3 and 4 player game is the number of points you have plus the number of points that your left-hand neighbor has. So you're trying to do something that will help them score. So next player may go here, and you continue on. There's other special tiles. There's 2 of these where if you take this spot, you get to remove a tile completely from play. There's 2 of these. When you get this one, you swap the location of 2 tiles. As you move on, you're going to get the points where someone goes here, someone does this, and they want to swap for some reason. And eventually you may get to a point where you have very few choices. So if this player here takes this yellow one, the next player could take this one, capture this piece, and now the boat can't move and the game ends. This player is going to get 8 points for that orange because no one else has it, and will win the game based solely on that. So this player cannot take this yellow. They could if they want to give the game to another player, but they should take the orange for themselves. And then this player has a forced move. This one has a forced move to swap. Again, essentially a wasted turn. And then the game continues until the boat cannot move and players score. With 3 and 4 players, Tonari has an element of cooperation since your final score is equal to your points plus your left-hand neighbor's points. But there's a limit to how much you want to help them. If your left-hand neighbor, call them Bob, has the most points, not the final score, but the most points, that could help you win. Except if Bob's left-hand neighbor has more points than you do, because then Bob's left-hand neighbor's score is points are added to Bob's points, and Bob will win. So ideally, you want the most points because then you're in control of your own fate, except you're not. Because if your right-hand neighbor has more points than your left-hand neighbor, well, your right-hand neighbor is going to add your score to theirs and win. So you have to help your neighbor, your left-hand neighbor, to some degree to have a better score than your right-hand neighbor, but hope it also doesn't carry down the chain. It's fascinating to see this dynamic play out. I played 8 times on a review copy for my DW games with 2 and 3 players. I'll talk about the 2-player game in a moment. But it's kind of interesting just to watch people score and watch them puzzle over what's going to help them and help you, but not the next person. And can they even do that? What's interesting is underneath the surface of this fishing theme, Tonari is a perfect information abstract strategy game, which is how the game was originally released. When you look at Knockbarn or the original release Valino, there is no graphics in here. You can see from this, you're not selling the game based on how it looks on the shelf. You're going to have it out on the table. You're going to sell it in ritzy shops, mostly because it's got this fancy wooden board, and the components are these wooden discs that you put into the spaces at random. People are going to move around this gray disc to collect stones, and the scoring works a little differently. It's for 3 to 4 players only, but again, perfect information. Everything is out there, and that is true in Tonari as well. So you're going to make choices to try to drive the boat where you want it to go. And this can work well, or it can work not so well. You saw in the example, you have to be wary of where you can let someone bring the game to an end and win, or have someone else win other than you. So I saw this play out multiple times in our 3-player game, and we would let people restart the game or just go back a move and then take a different move because they were learning the game and did not see that they could just lose it completely with this one move that then the next player would make this other turn that would lead it to an endpoint. So we'll let them restart and go again. So as you play Tonari, it's a very quick game, perhaps 10 minutes. You could play longer if you wanted to try to think ahead more and try to puzzle out everything possible. But it's got these choke points where it swings the next several turns of the game, where you have forced moves in order not to lose. And it's hard to recognize those initially, right? It's got the elements of a good, perfect information abstract strategy game where you can get better as you learn the consequences of play and see how things play out in the future. You can do that if you want, or you can play more casually and just start over and you play another round and play another round because it's a very quick game. The 2-player game, which is new with this edition, works differently in that you are not adding points to a neighbor because your neighbor is your opponent. There is only you and the other person. So all you do is you count up your points and the most points wins. And there's nothing different with the gameplay. It's fascinating to see this dynamic where everything is the same, but now it's just all about me. That's all I care about. You still have the element of trying to make forced moves. Force the other player to make a bad choice, to eat the -5 points, to force them to let you make the jump onto the pink fish. It's great to see that in the 2-player game compared to the 3-player game experience, which has a completely different feel, even though it has the same rules. I haven't yet played before. I imagine it's very similar to the 3-player game, just because, again, you're adding the scores. You're going to get many fewer tiles, since there are 4 players instead of 3, but I imagine it works the same way. Still have to try that. Hard to play game with every player count, every combination, really get a good feel for it. I do the best I can. Let me try. So there's a rundown of Tonari, debuting at Gen Con 2019 for my DW games. Give it a try. Help your fellow gamers.